What's up guys, my name is Dari and I hope that you have a great day because today we're going to create a complete Laravel 8 project. I want to start off on a basic level and create a complete block. If you're completely new to Laravel and you haven't really done it before, I recommend you to watch my complete Laravel 8 from scratch course because I won't be covering most topics in depth since I've just spent a couple months doing that. If you are interested in learning Laravel 8, I will add a link in the description down below. Just like the course, we're going to work with a couple of tools right here. I'm using Google Chrome as my browser and I'm using iTerm as my command line interface. First things first, let's create our Laravel project. Inside my terminal, I'm going to change directories and I want to go to my desktop /workspace. So in here, let's create a Laravel project. Let's say Laravel, new, Laravel block. This will create our Laravel project and this might take a second, so I will cut this part out and I'll see you back in a second. As you can see right now on my screen, our application has been created and we're getting a pretty nice message back that we're ready to build something amazing. So let's do that. Let's cd into Laravel block, the folder that we just created. And before I continue on, I want to make sure that we're on the same page with our PHP version, Artisan version, and npm version. So first, let's write down PHP Artisan -- version. And as you could see right there, this video has been created on the 22nd of February in 2021, and we're using the most up-to-date Laravel version, which is 8.2.8.1. After my Laravel course, I upgraded my PHP. So let's write down PHP-v. And as you can see, we're running on PHP 8.0. Now the last thing that we need right here is npm, mainly because we're going to work with Tailwind for our CSS. The reason I've chosen to use Tailwind is because I'm trying to save us some time. So let's say node space -v. And as you can see, we're running on version 14.15.5. Since we're on the topic of Tailwind, let's actually pull it in. I'm running on a Mac and lately I've been running into some issues with mix. So Laravel mix. Now I kind of found a solution for this, so follow along for a second. Step number 1 is to pull in our Tailwind presets. So let's say composer require Laravel -frontend -presets / Tailwind CSS space -- By running this command, Laravel will automatically discover the Tailwind package. We're going to use the authentication of Laravel and we can pull that in with Tailwind as well. So let's say PHP Artisan UI Tailwind CSS space -- of authentication. It's saying that we need to run or install npm and run it, but before we do that, let's write down npm remove Laravel -mix. Now it's removing everything, and this might take a second, so I will cut it out. Now what we need to do is to run Laravel mix in safe dev. So let's say npm install Laravel -mix space -- safe -dev. And this might take a second as well. Alright, now let's install npm. So npm install space cross -env space -- safe -dev. Now to keep our CSS compiling every time we use Tailwind, let's write down npm run watch. Alright, we're ready to go. If we go to our Visual Studio Code and let's open a project. So let's open folder, my desktop workspace, Laravel block. Let's open it. And we're ready to kick off. Usually I double check to see if my Tailwind has been compiled. So let's open our public directory, CSS and the app.css. And right now you can see that our CSS has been compiled because we have a lot of stuff in here that we haven't created ourselves. And if we write down Command F or Control F, write down Tailwind, you can see that Tailwind has indeed been pulled in. Now the next step is to set up our database credentials. So let's close off the app.css because we don't need it anymore. Let's open .env and our database credentials are stored right here. The connection is MySQL. The host needs to be changed to localhost for me. The port is alright. The database name is Laravel blog, and we haven't created it yet, but we will do it in a second. The user is root, and the password is Dari1234 for me. For you, this needs to be your MySQL credentials. Your password could also be empty, but that's up to you. I hope that you know how to use your own settings by now. Let's save it, let's close it off, and we're ready to create our first controller. So let's go to our terminal. Let's open a new tab. And let me zoom in. Let me cd to desktop, workspace, Laravel blog. And in here, let's run PHP, Artisan, make me a controller called pages controller. And what we're going to do in here is basically defining the basic pages that we need. I will only be focusing on the home page. So let's open the Visual Studio Code. Go to our app, HTTP, controllers, pages controller. So I will only focus on the home page. So the public function index. If you want to add more pages, you could basically go right below our public function index method and say public function about, which will create the about page for you. But I won't focus on it, so let's remove it. In here, let's actually return a view. So let's say return view. And in here, in single quotes, we want to say index. Before we're going to work on our UI, let's hop to our routes. Let's close off public actually. Routes, web.php. And let's scroll down for a second. And as you could see right here, we have 3 routes. One which will return the view welcome page, the authentication routes, and the /home route. The first route is actually the one that we don't need, so let's remove it. While the second one is the authentication routes, and these are basically all the routes that you need for authentication. This is automatically pulled in because we pulled in the auth flag when we imported our Tailwindcss. Now if you hop to the CLI and write down PHP Artisan route : list, and let me actually zoom out. All right, and right here on the screen you can see all the routes that one single line has created for us. We have the endpoint login, logout, password confirm, password email, reset, reset with a token, and register. And these methods or these URIs all refer to a method inside our authentication controller. What we need to do right now is to create a route for the home page. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code. Right above our routes of authentication, let's create a new route. So route : get. The first param is the endpoint. So in our case, it's /, comma. The second one is the class. So brackets, pages controller, : class, comma. And the last one is the method. So in single quotes, index. Let's go up. Let's pull in our pages controller. So let's say use app / http / controllers / pages controller. And I'm not sure if I need to zoom in or not. I think this looks better. All right, save it. Let's actually open our views. So resources, views. Let's get rid of welcome and home because I don't want to use it. And let's create a new file called index.blade.php. Let's write down home, save it, go to the browser. Oh, I actually forgot to run PHP Artisan serve. So let's do that as well. Let me zoom in. Let's say cd desktop workspace Laravel blog. Let's say PHP Artisan serve. All right, let's copy the URI that we have, paste it in the browser. And apparently our controller does not exist. So let's see what we just did wrong. Oh, it's a capital A, my bad. Save it, go to Google Chrome, refresh it, and home has been printed out. Now let's focus on controllers a little bit more. Controllers tend to group similar routes together, and that's why I love to use a blog as my first project when I teach something. A blog is something which is called a CRUD application. Some of you knew that, some of you might not, so that's why I like to repeat myself. A CRUD application, so CRUD, stands for create, read, update, and delete. And these are the 4 primary operations that most common web applications provides on a resource. And keep the words that I'm using in mind. I use the word resource, and that's exactly what we're going to use inside our terminal. Naming your methods in the controller can be the hardest part of writing a controller. Thankfully, Laravel has some very cool conventions for all of the routes of a traditional CRUD controller, called a resource controller. So let's hop to our CLI. In here, let's write down, well, let me zoom in again. PHP, Artisan, make me a controller called posts controller, space, double dash, resource. Let's hit enter. And oh, I forgot to add a model. So let's say PHP, Artisan, make me a model called post. All right. And what the double dash resource does is generating an out-of-the-box and convenience route definition that allows you to bind an entire resource controller at once. Let me show that to you. Let's go to the controller. Let's open post controller. And right here, you can see a couple pre-filled methods that we have. And if we go to our web.php file, we need to define the route to our blocks. So right below our / endpoint, let's say route, : resource. The endpoint will be / block. The second param is the posts controller, : class. Let's pull it in. So let's duplicate it. Let's change the second one to post controller. All right, save it. I won't be covering all the methods right now in detail because I'm going to do it in a second when we're done designing our pages. So whenever we reach the point, it will be fresh in your mind. Now let's start off with the design phase. I will be doing it relatively fast. I won't cover every single word I use for Tailwind, so just follow along, and if you are not interested in the designing part, I will put a timestamp on the screen where you can skip forward. So first, let's design our layout. Let's go to our views, open layouts, app.blade.php, and right here you can find the basic navigation that we could use. But if we scroll down to the bottom, we have a yield content section, which I want to wrap inside a div. So let's do that. And right below our div, let's create a new one, and let's include the layouts.footer. Let's create a file. So let's create a new file called footer.blade.php. Let's close it off because we won't need it right now. I want to change the header class real quick. I want to say that it needs to be BG gray 800. Now let's go to our nav. So right here, let's copy one anchor. Let's go right above our guest template. Otherwise it won't be visible when we log in. So let's remove the entire href. And instead, the first one will be /. And inside the anchor tags, let's write down home. Let's copy paste it one more time. Let's change the second one to blog. And the endpoint to / blog as well. Now let's save it, close it off, and open the footer.blade.php. And let's start off with styling the footer. So let's say footer, a div, and another div in here. Now the first div has a class of bg-gray-800. Padding y-axis is 20 and the margin top is 20 as well. First div has a class of sm grid. Grid equals 3. The width is -25. Padding bottom is 10. The margin is auto. And the border -b-2 needs to be added. And a border -gray-700. Now the second div does not need any classes, but we need to add an h3 in here, which says pages. Let's give it a class of text-l, so large, for small devices, and sm, font-bold, text-gray-100. Right below our h3, let's create an unordered list with a class of py-4 for big devices, so sm, text-s, padding top is 4, text is gray 400. Now in here we need to add list items, so create an li, give it a class of padding bottom 1. Inside our list items we need anchors, and the first one is the home page. The endpoint is /. Now let's copy the list item and paste it 3 more times. So 1, 2, 3. The first endpoint is all right. The second one is the blog page. So blog and the href is /blog. Third one is login. So /login. And the last one is register. So /register. This was it for the first div. We could copy paste the div with the actual content. So the div inside the grid. Copy it. Paste it one more time right below. Change the title to find us. First answer is what we do. Second one is address. Third one is phone. And the fourth one is contact. And let's remove the endpoints because hrefs because we don't need it. Now let's do it one more time. So let's go right below our div. Paste it right there. Change the title to latest posts. And what you could do right here is to add a couple of your latest posts. So why we love tech, why we love design, why to use Laravel, and let's say why PHP is the best. Let's remove the hrefs because we won't be doing this. And right above our end footer or closing footer tag, let's create a paragraph of a class width-25, width-4-5, padding bottom is 3, margin is auto, text is extra small, text is gray 100, typo, and the padding top is 6. And in here, let's write down copyright 2017-2021, code with Dari, all rights reserved. Let's scroll up, save it, close it off. Let's open the index.blade.php. Let me get rid of my comments. I want to start off designing the home page first. So this ugly little thing that we have. So first off, let's extend the layouts.app file. And remember that inside the app.blade.php file at the bottom, we have a yield content. So in our index page, we could say add section with the name of content, and let's end section as well. Inside our section, let's create a div, another div, and one more. So the first one has a class of, well, before we actually do that, let's save it and look at the footer and header. And to be honest, this looks pretty good, but the width of our footer needs to be better. So let's open the footer real quick. Let's say width-4-5. Refresh it, and this is what we need. Save it, close it off, and the first div that we have inside our index page has a class of background-image, which we will create in a second. It's a grid grid-calls1, and it has a margin of auto. The second div has a class of flex, text-gray-100, padding top is 10. And the last div has a class of margin-auto, padding top of 4, padding bottom of 16, sm, colon, margin-auto, width is -4-5, block, and the text is center. So in here we could create an h1 with the text of do you want to become a developer. Give it a class of sm, colon, text-white, text-5xl, uppercase, font-bold, text-shadow-md, and the padding bottom is 14. Right below our h1, let's create an answer with the text of read more. The href will bring us to /blog. Outline it a little bit better. We have a class of text-center, the bg gray 50, text-gray 700, and I know this might be pretty boring, but it will get better in a minute. Padding y-2, padding x is 4, font is bold, text is extra large, and it's uppercase. Now I don't like to add a background image right here with Tailwind, so I created the background image class. Now that is a custom class. So let's create that real quick. Let's go to resources, CSS, app.css. And in here, we could create our own class. So .background-image. It has a background-image of URL, which we don't have. So let's go to Pixabay. That's my go-to website when I need images. Let's say laptop dark. All right, so let's choose which one is good. We could use this one. Let's right click and open image in new tab, copy it, paste it inside the URL in single quotes. Let's get the background-position to center, background-repeat to no-repeat, background-attachment is fixed. Now the background size is a full cover and the height is 600 pixels. Save it. Let's save the index page as well. Go to the browser, refresh our homepage. And all right, this looks pretty good, right? So let's continue on. We're not done yet. Let's go to Visual Studio Code. And right below our first big div, let's create a new one, which has a class of sm grid-calls-2. Gap is 20. The width is 25. Margin X is auto. Padding Y 15. The border is border B, border-gray-200. So in here, we need to create a new div and we want the image. So let's open Pixabay again. Let's remove this one. Let's look up laptop now. So let's just click on one. Refresh it. All right, this is good for now. Let's give it a width of 400. Nah, it needs to be bigger. Let's say 700 pixels. Yeah, this looks fine. So right outside of our div, let's create a new div where we have actual content to the right side. So let's say that we have a class of margin-auto, sm::margin-auto, text is left, width is 80%, so 4-5, and it's block. Now in here we have a h2 with a class of text-3xl, font-extra bold, and the text is gray. So in our h2, let's say struggling to be a better, let's say a web developer. Right below our h2, let's create a paragraph with a class of py-8, text-gray-500, and the text is small. Let's write down lorem in here, and this is a bit too much. So this is all right. Let's create a new paragraph with a class of font-extra bold, text-gray-600, and the text small, and the padding bottom is 9. In here, let's write down lorem again. Let's remove a little bit from the text that we have. All right. And right below our paragraph, let's create an answer with the text of find out more. href is to /blog. Give it a class of uppercase, bg-blue-500, text-gray-100, text is small, font is extra bold, py3, px is 8, rounded-3xl. Save it. Let's look at the output. And this looks pretty good, but I think the text should be a lot bigger. Let me scroll up. Oh, the div width needs to be 4-5. I don't know why I keep saying 25, my bad. Refresh it. All right. Let's make the struggling to be a better web developer to 4XL. And the paragraphs could be large, I guess. Let's see. Second one 2, so text L. All right, we need a new section. So right below our div, create a new one. where we will add static data, but if you'd like, you can easily pull this in out of your database. The div has a class of text-center, padding is 15, BG is black, and the text is white. So inside the div, let's create an h2, and let's say class is text-2xl, padding bottom is 5, text-l. And in here, let's say I'm an expert, ... And right below our h2, let's create a span with a class of font-extra bold, block, text is 4xl, and the py is 1. And in here, let's say UX design, copy paste it a couple times. The second one is project management. Third one is digital strategy. And the last one is, let's say, backend development. Save it, refresh it. And this starts to look good, but I think the paragraphs needs to be XL. Yeah, this looks way better. All right. I want to showcase some of my newest blog posts that we created. So what we could do is to create a section for it on the homepage. So let's scroll down right below our div. Let's create a new div, and I'm starting to repeat myself constantly. Give it a class of text-center. PT is 15 and the PT bottom, well, let's say PY 15. Let's create a span right here. Class uppercase. Text is small and the text is gray 400. The text in here is block. We have an h2 with a class of text-4xl, font-bold, pt or py is 10. And let's say recent posts. And let's create a paragraph with lorem ipsum. Let's remove again a bit more text over here. Give it a class of margin-auto, width-4-5, my bad. And the text is gray 500. Save it, refresh it, and this starts to look very good. Let me zoom in actually. Wait. Let's actually change back the text of the paragraphs to L, maybe? Nah, let's do S. I needed to be zoomed in, but I totally forgot to do it for my browser. Paragraph or the H2 to H3 again. And yeah, this looks good. Now what I want to do right now is to add some dummy or static data of posts right here. So let's scroll down. Let's create a new div. Give it a class of sm, grid equals 2, width is -4-5, again, margin-auto. Let's create a div in here with a class of flex, bg yellow 700, text-gray-100, pt 10. Let's create a new div. Give a class of m-auto, pt-4, padding bottom is 16, sm, m-auto, width is -4/5, block. Let's give it a span, class of uppercase, text-extra small, let's say PHP. Right below our span, let's create an h3, which has a class of text-xl, font-bold, py is 10. Let's create lorem ipsum again. And this is enough. And right below our h3, let's create an answer. We don't need to fill in the href, but the class is uppercase, bg-transparent, border-2, border-gray-100, text gray 100, text is extra small, font is extra bold, py is 3, px is 5, and the rounded 3xl borders. Let's write down, find out more in here, save it, refresh it. All right, let's create a new div, but I want to add an image right here, but let's just scroll up to save some time. Copy the div that we have with the image. Let's replace the div that we just created. Oops, this does not need to be right there. Let's add it in between it. All right, this looks good. And I will keep it like this for now. Does it look good? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'm not sure. All right, now let's go to our post controller in our Visual Studio Code. And right inside of our index method, let's return a view to block.index. So this view does not exist yet, but we will do it right now. So let's go to our views. Let's create a new folder called block. And in here, a new file called index.blade.php. Let's write down block. Let's go to the browser. Let's go to block, and block has been printed out. Right now, we're ready to design the block page. So let's do that. Let's get rid of block. Extends, let's say layouts.app. Let's create a section called content. And let's end the section as well. In here, let's create a div with a class of width-4-/5, margin auto, text center, a div inside of the div, a class of py15, border-b, border-gray-200. And inside our div, let's create an h1 with a text of block posts with a class of text6xl. Save it, refresh the page, and this start still looks pretty nice. So let's continue on. Right below our divs, let's create a new div with a class of sm::grid equals 2, gap is 20, width is -4-4/5, margin x is auto, py is 15, border-b, border-gray-200. So in here we need two divs because we have a grid column 2. So div. The first div will be an image. So once again, let's go to our home page and let's copy the entire div and let's replace it with the first one. Inside the second div, let's create an h2 with the text of learn how to write Laravel code. And this will be a static block, which we will wrap inside the loop later on so we can pull out block items from the database. So let's give it a class of text-gray-700, font-bold, text-5xl, padding bottom is 4. Right below our h2, let's create a span with a class of text-gray-500, and let's say by span, another span. Give it the class of font-bold italic text-gray-800. In between, code with Dari, so the author. After the span, comma, 1 day ago. Right below, let's create a paragraph with a class of text-xl, text-gray-700, pt is 8, pb is 10, leading-8, and the font is light. Let's give it a lorem. All right, right below our paragraph, an answer. Keep reading. And we will come back on the href in a second, but give it a class of uppercase. bg-blue-500. Text-gray-100. Text is large. Font is extra bold. py is 4, px is 8, and the rounded 3xl corners. Save it. Refresh the page, and this looks pretty nice, right? Right now, we have created our design, even though it is static. So we're finally ready to create some actual Laravel code. And I want to brainstorm for a couple of minutes with you. I want to write down all the endpoints that we might need. So let me go to VS Code. Let's actually close off all tabs and open the posts controller. And let me go to the bottom. I'll write it down right here. So for our create, whenever you want to create a new blog post, you will be calling the /blog method. But what's next? because this is the page that will showcase all blogs, as you could see right in the URI right now. But what if we want to create a post? Well, we need to add a /create endpoint right after it. And for the read, now in order to read blog posts, we need to call our index method. So /blog/index. The index will not be visible, so it's just /blog, what we have right now. What about the update? What do we need? Is it /blog/update? Nope, this is wrong. In order to update something, we need to tell the application what we need to update. So we need to perform a put method. We basically want to do a request to /blog/specific ID, or in our case, it will be a slug. Now for the delete, we need to do the same exact thing. If we want to delete something, we need to call /blog/specific slug, or a specific ID. But how can we tell what the difference is between the update and delete? That's something that will be done with the CSRF token, or basically the method that you will pass into your form. For the update, we need to perform a put or a patch request or a method. And for the delete, we need to perform a delete method. Now, besides the endpoints that we see right now, we also need a page where we show data of a specific ID or a slug. What endpoints do we need? If you want to show data, it will be /blog/ID. But instead, we will perform a get method or request. And the last one is the edit page. This endpoint will be /blog/specific ID /edit. So we're basically saying, well, grab this ID and edit it. And this will also be a get request. So what's next? Let's get rid of the comments. We set up our database credentials, so we haven't set up our database itself. And in order to do that, we need to create a migration. In order to do that, we need to hop to MySQL, write down MySQL in terminal, show tables, show databases. Let's create database called Laravel blog, semicolon. So let's show databases again. Laravel blog has been created. Let's open a new tab. Let's cd, let me zoom in, into desktop workspace, Laravel blog. And since we already created our model or post model, let's create a migration. So let's say PHP Artisan, make me a migration called posts. And it's creating our migration while it's actually done. So go to Visual Studio Code, and our migrations are located in database, migrations, and it's always the bottom one. Once you create a new migration, since it's been created based on timestamps. So in our up method, let's create a schema, create. Inside our create method, let's call it posts, function, method. All right. Inside our function, we need to pass in blueprint, table. Now the columns that we need to define is table, increments, which will be ID. We have a table string, which will be the slug. We have another string, which is the title. We have another long text, which will be the description. So I also want to create an image upload. So let's say table, string, but we only want the image underscore path. So we don't want to save our actual image in the database, but only the image path. Let's add timestamps. So table timestamps, which is a method with no name in here. Let's create a table, unsigned big integer with the name of user ID. Now let's link our user ID to the users table. That's this one. So to this specific ID. In order to do that, let's say table foreign. So we have a foreign key called user underscore ID, access operator, references to ID, on the table users. Let's save it. Let's go to iTerm. Let's write down PHP Artisan migrate. And as you can see, our post migration has been created. But before we create our first post, I want to show you the database structure. So let's go back to MySQL and let's write down use Laravel block. And right now we need to say desk posts. And as you could see right here, our ID is auto increment, which is the primary key, and the user ID is the mul, which means that it's a foreign key. Now to insert data, let's add one row ourselves before we create the post page. Let's say insert into posts, the value slug, title, description, image underscore path, and the user ID. The values are, well, let's add some dummy data. The slug first dash post, title is first post, the description is description first post, image path is test, we're not going to use it right now, and the ID is 1, so the user ID. If we try to add it right now, you can see that we're getting an error message, and that's actually good. This means that our foreign key can't be found since we haven't registered an account. So if I say select all from users, as you can see, our table is empty, so it can't link our foreign key. So let's do that first. Let's go back to the UI. Let's click on login in the menu. Well, register actually, my bad. The name is code with Dari. Email is info@myinfo. My password is something secret. Let's register. We deleted the view home, so this is something we need to change. Let's change the endpoint. And as you can see, we're logged in. Let's go back to MySQL, hit the arrow up twice. Let's insert it one more time. And you can see that one row has been affected. So let's actually select all from posts. And as you could see, it has been added because our foreign key exists right now. Before we do anything, let's think about it for a second. We want to interact with our post table. So what do we need? We need to somehow place our model in between the controller and the database. So let's pull in the model first inside our controller. So let's go up. Let's actually close off the migration. Inside the post controller, let's say use app / models / post. Let's scroll down, and inside our index method, let's create a new variable called post, and let's set it equal to post : all. So get me all posts. Before we send it back to the front end, let's dd variable post to see what the output is, or to actually see if it even works. Save it, refresh the page. Well, let's go to blog. And yes, this works because we are getting back one row, which is all right because we just added one row in our database. What we could do in our controller is to keep it as a variable and pass the variable into the UI, but that's a couple extra lines of code that we don't need. What we could do is, well, let's actually get rid of everything. I want to make it a little bit better. So we're returning a view. Let's go right after the view method, hit enter. Add a method with, the first one is posts, and we want to say post : order it by. So we want to order it by updated _add, comma, desk, so descending. And then we want to get every post that we have. We're ready to show our post in the UI, so let's scroll down. Let's open the index.blade in the blog, and let's go right above our div, right here. Let's add curly braces, and let's write down variable post to see if it even worked. Refresh it, and this looks fine. So what we could do is to get rid of it and wrap a for each loop around our div. So let's create a for each. as multiple posts, but we want to print them out as one post. So as one post. Let's copy our entire div, remove it, and let's paste it right inside of the loop. Let me align it. All right, so we're ready to make it dynamic. So in our H2, let's get rid of learn how to write Laravel code, post, title. Save it, go to Chrome, and first post has been printed out. I'll come back on the span in a second, but let's do the description first. So let's say post description. Now for the keep reading button that we have, let's say /blog / curly braces post slug. This won't work right now, but we will do it later on. Now, is this it? Well, like I said, I want to add the author as well. But how does that work? We need to use eloquent relationships right here, because we already have the user ID for a specific post. Like this, let me print it out. So let's say we have post user _ ID. Refresh it, and one has been printed out. But this is not the way to go, because we can't access the users table, right? In a relational database model, it is expected that you will have tables that are related to each other, just as we did. Then Eloquent will provide a simple and powerful tool to make the process of relating your database tables very easy. Let's think about it. One post can only have one user. But what about the user? Well, a user can have more than one post, right? Or do you want to forbid them to create more posts after their first one? Now to fix that, we need to create the most common relationship, and that's the one-to-many relationship. So let's open the post model. Let's scroll up, models, post model. And let's create a method, so public function. And for the name of the method, we use the name of the relationship method and call it as it is a property instead. So let's say user. What we need to do inside our method is to return this belongs to, which is a method. In here, we need to pass in the model name. So in our case, it's user, : class. So one post belongs to one user. We also need to define a relationship method inside our user model. So let's open it. Let's scroll to the bottom. Let's create a new method, public function post. So one user has many posts. So return this has many. And let's pass in the post : class. Save it. Go back to the index.blade.php. Let's get rid of my name right here. And what we could do right now is to add curly braces and say post, get me the user method that we just created, and find me the name. Save it, refresh the browser, and code with Dari, so the author's name has been added. The last thing that I want to add here is the date time. So I want to get rid of 1 day ago. And this won't work because if we go to our database, the created at and updated at are null. But let's add the code. Let's go to index.blade. Let's get rid of 1 day ago. Now let's say created on curly braces date, which is the method of PHP. And we want to be a J capital S, capital M, capital Y format. After the single quote, let's add a comma, string to time, because we need to pass in the actual timestamp. So let's say post, which is a method. So let's say post updated _at. Save it, refresh the page. And as you can see, it's null, so it picks the 1st of January 1970. But later on, when we create our post, it will automatically create a new timestamp. So we are done for now. I will come back for a picture later on when we create a post, but for now, let's just continue on. We're done with showing a post, so let's create a post now for ourselves. And to do that, we need to add a button somewhere so we could easily add a post. But think about it. You don't want to give everyone that enters your website the permission to create a post, right? So we need to build in some kind of security that only logged in users can add data. So in our index.blade, let's go up. Above our loop, let's create an if statement where we want to check if auth, : check. This method, the check method, will determine if a user is already logged in or not. If it is true, we're going to print out a button. So let's say div, let's give it a class, class of pt15-15, width is 80%, and the margin is auto. In here, let's create an answer with a text of create a post. The href is /blog/create. And let's give it a class. Let me align it. A class of bg-blue-500, uppercase, bg-transparent. Text is gray, but 100 strength. Text is extra small. Font is extra bold. py is 3. And it has rounded -3 corners. Save it. Refresh it. And you can see that created post has been added here, but it actually does not look good. Let's add px of 5. Save it, refresh it, and this looks pretty nice, right? Right now, we are logged in, so we can't actually check if the button will appear if we log out. So let's do that. Let's log out, go to /blog, and there's no button to create a post. Let's log in now, because we do want to create a post. So let's say info, password. Well, still need to change the home page, but let's go to blog. Now, if we create a post, it will not show anything because we still haven't created a route or the file. So let's go to Visual Studio Code. Inside our blog directory or folder, create a new file called create.blade.php. Let's write down create. Let's define the route in our controller. So inside the create method, let's say return a view to blog.create. Save it, refresh the page, and create has been added. What we could do right now is to go to our index page. Let's scroll down. Let's just copy everything, paste it inside the create.blade.php, and let's get rid of the loop. We don't need it. We don't need a check as well, but we do need the first div where we added an h1. So let's change the text to create post. And let's also remove the border. And let's set the text center to text left inside the div. Now right below our first section, let's create a new div. Give it a class of width-4/5, margin auto pt20. And in here, we're ready to create our form. So let's write down form, hit tab, and let's set the action to /blog. Let's set the method equal to post. And let's also set the enc type equal to multipart /form-data. And this is to let the application know that we're going to upload a file. So right outside of our form opening tag, let's add a CSRF token. So let's say add CSRF, which is the cross-site request forgery. And it needs to be added in case one website pretends to be another. Whenever someone's goal is to hijack your users' access to your website, CSRF will prevent that. Now let's think for a minute. What input fields do we need? Let's go to iterm. As you can see right here, we have our ID, but that's auto increment. We have our slug, but we will create our slug based on the title. We do need a title, description, image path, and the created at and updated at will be auto created. And we will add the user ID based on the user that is creating a post. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code and let's create our input fields. Below our CSRF token, let's write down input, hit tab. The type is text. Let's give it a name of title. Let's give it a placeholder of title, ... And let's give it a class of bg-gray-0, block, border-b-2. The width is full. The height is 20. Text is 6XL. And the outline is none. Instead of adding another input field for the description, I want to create a text area. Let's get rid of the ID, calls, and rows. We don't need it. Let me align it. All right. The name is description. Let's give it a placeholder of the description as well. Give it a class of py is 20, bg-gray-0, block, border-b-2. The width is full. The height is 60. Text is XL. And the outline is none as well. Now we do need a button in order to upload our image, obviously. And I don't want to use the ugly one that we have by default. So let's change it up a little bit. Let's create a div and give the div a class of bg-gray-lighter, and the PT is 15. Inside the div, let's add a label. And we don't need a for, but we do need a class of width-44, flex, flex-cool, items are centered, px-2, py is 2, let's say 3 actually, bg white rounded lg, shadow-lg, it's tracking-white. I want the text to be uppercase. I want a border. The border is blue, so border-blue, and the cursor is a pointer. Now inside our label, let's create a span with a class of margin top is 2, the text-base, and it's leading-normal. And here let's add a text. Let's say select a file. And we need an input field that is hidden. So right below our span, let's create an input. The type is equal to file. Let me align it again. The name is image. And let's set the class equal to hidden. Now let's save it. Let's go back to the browser. Refresh it. And this starts to look pretty good, but I don't want the background color to be white. So let's change that up. Let's scroll up. Let's change the bg-gray-0 to bg-transparent. And let's copy it and replace the text area background color as well. Save it. Refresh the browser. And this actually starts to look pretty good. The only thing that's left right now is a button to submit it. So let's add that as well. Right below our div, let's create a button where the type is equal to submit. Well, let me align it again. Class is uppercase. The margin top is 15. bg-blue-500. Text-gray-100. Text is large. Font is extra bold. The py-4. px is 8. And we have rounded corners. So rounded-3xl. Inside the button, let's write down submit post. Save it. Refresh the browser. And our button is added right there. Let's log in. Let's say info. I'm not telling you my password. Again, same error. Let's change the endpoint to /. We're logged in. Go to blog. Let's create a post. All right. Now, before we test it out, let's hop to our controller for a second. I want to show you something. We're going to use the create method that we're using right here to show the page. But we will use the store method that we have right here to save the entered data. So inside the store method, we can use the request object that we have right here. And the request object is the most common tool for accessing user data in Laravel. It's very easy to use and you have access to all of the ways users can provide inputs to your site. So usually before I test it out, I just add a DD right here to see if everything's fine. And let's DD the request. Save it. Go to Google Chrome. Well, we need an image, so I have my laptop open right there. So let me save it to the desktop. All right. Let's close it off because we don't need it, and Pixabay as well. Add a title. This is my new post. Description is new post. Let's select a file. Desktop, laptop, submit it. And as you can see, the die dump has been called. It really doesn't matter what we're seeing on the screen right now. The most important thing is that the flow works fine. First things first, let's validate the data that we have entered inside our input fields. So let's get rid of our DD. And in order to do that, we're going to pull in the request object, access operator. We're going to access the validate method. So inside the validate method, we're going to pass in an array. So let's add brackets and hit enter. And inside the array, we could basically say we have our title that needs to be required. Let's do the same thing for the description. So description needs to be required. Now the image needs to be required as well, but we have more rules. So pipe, the MIMEs, JPEG, PNG, JPEG, pipe, and the maximum is 5048 kilobytes. All right, what is the next step? We have our image right here, so let's save that first. So let's create a new variable called new image name, which is equal to unique ID, which is a method that would generate a unique ID for us. Now let's concatenate a dash, not a dot, but a dash, my bad. Let's concatenate one more time, and let's add the actual title to it. Let's concatenate one more time with a dot, because we do need to add the request image extension. So we're going to grab the extension from the current image. Now what we could do is to dd new image name to see the output, save it, refresh it, click on continue. Well, let's add our title again, test, select a file, click on laptop, submit it, and something is going wrong right here. So what we could do is to add validation to see what is going wrong. So right above our form, let's say if, so an if statement. If the errors any, so if there are errors, print out a div with a class of width-4/5, margin is auto, an unordered list, and let's create a for each loop in there to print out the messages. So we want to loop over all errors, so errors all, as one single error. And how do we want to print them out? As a list item. So let's give it a class of width-1/5, margin bottom is 4, text-gray-50, the background color is red 700, border is rounded 2XL, and the padding Y is 4. Inside our list item, let's print out the error that we have. Save it, refresh the page, add the title, test, add the image, submit it, and as you can see right here, the image must be of a file type JPEG, PNG, or JPEG. So something is going wrong right here with our image. And as you could see on my desktop, it is a WebP. So that's not what we want. So let's do that one more time. Let's go to Pixabay. Let's just click on something. This actually looks good. Let's download it. I'm not a robot. Oh my god, let's click on all the taxis. Let's download it. It has been added, so let's drag and drop it on the desktop. Well, let's add a new file. So test, select a file, add the lake, submit it, and this is our new image name. Now, as you can see, we have a unique ID right here. And if we refresh it, the ID will be changed. What we need to do next is to move the image to a folder inside our public folder. So let's go to the post controller, get rid of the DD. And in order to do that, let's call the request object again. We want to say image, we want to move it And inside the method, we need to pass in 2 params. The first param is the location where we want to move our image. So let's say public underscore path, parentheses, folder called images. Outside the public path method, let's add a comma and let's say the new image name. So we're going to move this image right here to a folder called public/images. A cool thing about this is that we don't need to create the image folder ourselves, because it will do it for us if it does not exist. Now, the next thing that I want to do is to add a slug, because remember, we have a column that needs to be filled in called slug. And in order to do that, we need to pull in a composer package called slug service, which will create the slug for us based on the title. So let's go to the CLI. Let's go to the other tab, and in here, let's say composer require CVIE broc / eloquent -sluggable. Let's hit enter, and it's pulling in everything that we need. And our composer package has been added to the vendor folder. And in order to make this package work, we need to use the sluggable trait inside our model. So let's go to the post model. Right below our has factory trait, let's add a new one, use sluggable. And this actually does not work right now because we need to pull it in. So let's say use CVIE broc / eloquent sluggable / sluggable. Let's create a method right here, right below the user method. So let's say public function sluggable. And I want to add the data type before we're returning something. So let's say colon space array. So we're saying that the method or the return method of this method needs to be an array. So let's return brackets. And let's close it off with a semicolon. What we want to return is, in single quotes, slug, pointer, another bracket, and the source is title. So we want to grab the title and make a slug out of it. And that was pretty easy. Let's save it. Let's go to the controller, because we need to pull in our slug service here as well. So let's go to the top. Let's say use CVIE broc / eloquent sluggable / services / slug service. Let's go back to our store method right here. All right. Right here, we could create a new variable. So let's say slug, and let's set it equal to slug service, colon, create slug. So a method that we just pulled in. Close it off. Let's go inside the method. The create slug method accepts 3 params. The first one is the model name. So let's say post, colon, class, comma. The second name is the column name. So in our case, in single quotes, it's slug, comma. The last param is the title, since we want to convert that into a slug. So let's say request title. Now let's dd our slug. So let's say dd slug, save it, go back to Google Chrome, refresh the page. On shit, we just entered test as a title. So let's do it one more time. Create a post. Let's say this is my title. Description is post, title, whatever. Select the image again. Submit it. And as you can see, our title has been converted to a slug. Now let's actually see if our image is been added or not. So public. We have a folder images, and we have our image right here. The image upload works as well. The only thing that's left is to create the actual post. But before we do that, we need to tell our model which fields needs to be filled in before a post can be created. So let's go to our post model, and right above our methods, let's create a new property. So protected fillable. Let's set it equal to an array and close it off with a semicolon. And inside the array, we need to pass in the columns that needs to be filled in. So let's say the title, the slug, the description, the image underscore path, and the user underscore ID. Save it, go to the post controller because we're ready to create our post. So to do that, let's say post, colon, create. Let's pass in an array. We have our title, which we want to grab from the request, input, title. We have our description, which we want to grab from the request, input, description. We have the slug, and what we could do is to get rid of the variable that we created and copy the slug surface or where we create the slug and paste it right here, which will save us a lot of lines of code. We have our image path, image underscore path, which we want to grab from the variable that we have because we don't want to upload the actual image. We just want to upload the name of the file. So let's do that. And the last one is the user underscore ID, which we want to grab from the auth, so the authentication method, user method, and we just want the ID. Let's add a comma instead of a semicolon, my bad. And right here as well. All right, save it. And I want to add one more thing, and that's adding a message whenever the post has been added. So let's do that. Let's say we want to return a redirect to /blog, so the blog overview. Then we want to say with a message. So the first param is message, and the second param is the message content. So let's say your post has been added. Now, in order to print out the message, let me outline it. Now, in order to print out the message, we need to go back to our index page because we are redirecting to the index.blade.php. And in here, we need to create a check. So let's go right above the actual content. Let's create a new if statement. And what we want to check is if the session has a message. So that's basically the array that we just passed in inside our controller. Let's say right here. So if there is a message, let's write down div, create a class of width-4/5, margin is auto, margin top is 10, padding left is 2. Let's create a paragraph where we will print out the error message. But first, let's give it a class of width-1/6, margin bottom is 4, text gray 50, the background is green 500, the corners are rounded -2xl, and the padding y is 4. If there are messages, let's say curly braces, print out this session, get the actual message, save it, and we're ready to test it out. So refresh the page actually, create a post. Let's say this is my new post. Title is content of my new post. Select a file. So the same image again. Submit it. And as you can see, your post has been added. But I think we need to add a little bit more width. So let's say the width is 2.6. Oh shit. But as you can see right here, our post has been created. Our username has been added. The created @ is right. The title is right and the content is right. The next thing that I want to do is to create a show page. So whenever we click on the keep reading button, I want to showcase this specific post. And the reason why I waited with this was, well, we needed a slug to do that. So let's go back to our controller. Let's scroll down because we need the show method. And as you could see, the resource list thinks that you will be using the ID. But what I want to do is to use the slug. So let's do that. Let's change the param to slug. And the type is a string. You don't need to change this. It will work, but I think it looks better for now. We actually don't need to do a lot inside the show method. We just need to return a view of blog.show. We need to showcase the blog post. So we need to pass that in as well. So let's go right outside of our view method. Line below. Let's add an access operator because we want to access the width method. We want to pass in one post, comma, and we want to grab it from the model, so post, where the slug, comma, is actually the slug in the URI. So the param that you see right here will be grabbed from the URI. Let me show that to you. If the endpoint is /blog / this is my first post, it will grab this is my first post. It will go and perform a query into the database to see if the column slug exists, and then it will see if the slug param exists in our database. We need to add one more method right here, because we want to say that we want to grab the first post. Save it, refresh the page, click on keep reading. This is fine because it says that the show page does not exist, but the endpoint is correct. So let's create a view, scroll down, blog, new file, show.blade.php. And we could actually copy the entire index page. So let's do that. Paste it inside the show method. And let's get rid of the session message because we don't need it. Well, actually, let's remove it and let's copy paste the create page. I think that's better. So instead of saying create post, we want to print out the title. So let's say post title. Save it. We don't need the errors because we don't have it. And we don't need the form because we're not going to submit anything. So let's get rid of that. Now inside the div, let's create a span with a class of text-gray-500. Let's say by, another span. Class is font-bold, italic, text-gray-800. Let's write down the username right here. So let's say post username. Right outside of our span, let's go to the index page and let's copy the date that we have right there. So let's create it on the date and the string to time. Paste it right after the span. Save it. Go right below our span. Create a paragraph. Give it a class of text-xl, text-gray-700. PT is 8, PB is 10, leading -8, and the font is light. And in here, we want to print out the post description. Save it. Refresh the page. And I think this looks fine for now. Well, we need to make sure that we can update a post. So let's focus on that right now. Let's go to our controller. Scroll down. And this is basically the same as the create. We have a edit page, but we will perform the update method. So inside our edit method, let's change ID to slug again. And the type is a string. And what we want to do right here is to return a view to blog.edit, which we don't have, but we will create it in a second. And this is basically the same as before. We want to say width, one single post, because we want to edit one post, and we want to grab it from the post model, where the slug is equal to the slug that has been passed in. And then we want to perform the first method to get the first link. Save it. Let's scroll down and create a view. So let's create a new file, edit.blade.php. And actually, let's go to the view. Let's go to the blog page. And let's add a button somewhere right here that is visible so we could edit a post easily. So let's go to the index page and let's say right below keep reading. Now, since we need to add the edit button for every single post, we need to add it inside the for each loop. And we only want to show the post if the user that's logged in has the same ID as the creator of the blog post. So let's say if is set the auth : user and grab me the ID, and the auth : user ID is equal, so double equal to post user ID. So we're doing two checks right here. We're going to see if the user is even logged in, and we want to see if the user ID of the person that is logged in is equal to the creator of the post. If it is, let's create a span of class float-right. Inside the span, let's create an anchor with the text of edit. The href will be /blog. Let me align it. All right. Endpoint is /blog / post slug. And right outside of the curly braces, /edit. So we want to edit a specific post. Now let's give it a class of text-gray-700, italic, and then hover, colon, text-gray-900, padding bottom is 1, and the border B is 2. Save it, refresh the page, and this is all right. Now let's create our form. Oh, let me go back. Let's click on edit. All right. Now let's start editing our edit page. But this will pretty much be the same as the create page. So let's copy everything, paste it inside the edit page, scroll up. Let's change the title to update post. We do want to keep the error messages. And right here, we want to change the form action to /blog / post slug, so a specific post. And here comes the tricky part. We want to perform a put request since we want to update something. And to make this work, we need to add a new method. So right below our CSRF token, let's say add method. And in here, we want to write down put. And this will transfer the post method that we added to our form to a put request. Now let's go over our input fields because we don't need placeholders. So let's get rid of it. But we do need a value. So let's set that equal to curly braces, post, title. Now let's do the same thing for text area, but a text area can't have a value. What we need to do instead is to add Laravel blade templates in between our opening and closing tag. So let's say post description. Save it, refresh the page. And this looks fine, so we can edit the title and we can edit the description. Right now, we're ready to create our edit controller or the update controller. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code, controller, update. Let's change the param to a string. A slug, excuse me. The data type is a string. And let's say slug. First, we need to say post where the slug is slug. Then we want to say update it. We want to pass in an array, and we could actually go up and copy everything that we have right here for the create method because it's pretty much the same. Paste it right inside of the update method, and let's return a redirect. So let's say return redirect to /blog, and we want to pass in a message. So with message, and the message is your post has been updated. All right, let's save it and let's try it one more time. Let's change the title to this is my new updated post. Submit it. And oops, we have an undefined variable. Now I don't want to update the image path. So save it, refresh the page, and you can see that the post has been updated. Sorry for the terrible UI that I have right here, but I don't want to change it anymore. And you can see that the title has been updated. Now we could add validation here as well. So let's go to the create, copy the request validated, paste it right above the update method. Let's get rid of the image, save it, go to the edit page, and let's get rid of the input field because we don't want to edit the image. Save it, refresh the page, edit it one more time. So let's remove updated, submit it, and this is my new post has been updated again. We need to delete a post as well. So in here, I want to pass in the slug instead of the ID. We want to say variable post is model post where the slug is variable slug, and then we want to say post delete. What we need to do then is to return a redirect. Or we could actually copy the redirect that we have right here. Replace it. We want to pass in a message, but we want to say your post has been deleted. Save it. And well, we don't have anything on our UI to delete the post. So let's go to the index.blade.php and right below our span, let's create a new span. But we can't copy the span and entry that we had because we want to perform a delete request. So we do need a form. But let's say span, the class is float-right. In the span, we have a form. Let me align it with the action of /blog/post slug, so a specific post. Then we have the method, which is equal to post. Now in here, we need to pass in the CSRF token. And we want to say that the method is equal to delete. Now inside our form, we need one button. So let's say button, the text is delete. Class is text-red-500 and the p right is 3. Now let's give it a type of submit. Save it, refresh the page, and the delete button has been added. Let's click on it, and you can see that the post has been deleted. Now before I wrap up the video, let's log out. I want to add one more validation. And I could go on for hours and hours to add more validation and more interaction and add JavaScript or Vue or React. But I just want to keep it simple and you can build on this page that I just created for you. If we go to the blog page, we're not able to create a post and the delete and edit button are gone. And if we click on keep reading, it's fine as well. Now the issue is that if we change the endpoint to /blog/create, we're still able to create a post. So let's somehow get through that. What we need to do is to go to our post controller, and right at the top, we need to create a constructor. So let's say public function _construct. And in here, we want to say that this middleware, so we want to call the middleware, and we want to say that the auth, comma, array, brackets, single quotes accept is another array, and in here we need to pass in the methods that the user can access if they're not logged in. So in our case, it's index because we're just showcasing all posts, and the show method. Save it, go back to Chrome, refresh the page, and we have been redirected to the login page. Now if we log in, you can see that we can create a post. Now I want to change two more things in here. The first thing is in the login controller, I want to get rid of the redirect to the /home page because we don't have that page. We can command click on it, but we could also go to the app, providers, and in here you can see the route service provider. As you can see, the endpoint for the home constant is /home. So let's get rid of home, save it. So let's go to the browser, let's log in, write down my email, my password, log in, and we have been redirected to the / instead of the /home page. Now the last thing is on the blog page, and I want to change the image that we have right here. So let's go to Visual Studio Code, close off the route service provider, go to the index.blade, and instead of having a static stores, let's remove it. Let's say curly braces, asset. Inside the asset method, we want to pass in the path to the image folder. So images, / and let's concatenate the post image _ path. Save it, go to the browser, refresh it. And this is the static post that we created. So let's delete it. Let's create a post. Let's say this is my new post, post description as the description, select a file, let's select the lake, submit it, and as you can see, our image has been added dynamic as well. Thank you for watching this video. Now, I recently created a Patreon where I will have my source code. The reason why I started Patreon is because YouTube is actually the only income source that I have online, and I'm making tons of content for you guys. So if you would like to support me, subscribe to my Patreon. It's not expensive. And if you don't want to subscribe, don't be worried. I appreciate every single one of you that watches the video. That being said, thank you for watching the video. If you do like my content and you want to see more, leave this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button.